Welcome back to Tech Tuesday. I am your host, Jordan Evans. I am so excited to talk about today's topic. Recently, the AARP HTech Collaborative released their State of AgeTech Report, and it is a comprehensive overview of the rapidly growing age tech sector. And so we're going to dive deep into this AgeTech report, talk about some things around this report, and I've brought on a very special person to talk about this. So we're going to talk about all the things that it covers and some of the highlighted parts of this collaborative or of this report is caregiving, FinTech, smart home technologies, AI, and inclusive design. So overall, this is a really interesting report, and we will drop a link in for you to read it yourself. But before we get into everything, let's have our intro. Love that intro. Today, I brought on my friend Erin, who is a subject matter expert in the business of longevity and healthy communities. Erin, how are you doing? So glad you're on the show.
Yeah, I'm doing great, Jordan. Thank you for the invitation. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yes, so let's dig in. Let's talk about it. This State of AgeTech report, I love that it talks about those not only just aging in communities and senior living, which is mostly what we talk about this show, but really it's all those that are aging, whatever setting they live in. And it's all the things associated with aging. So we're, talking about caregiving, FinTech, which is financial technology. I learned that what that actually meant recently because I hear FinTech all the time. Smart home technologies, AI, inclusive design. Let's dig in. So what are your thoughts coming out of this, out of reading this report?
What I really like about this report, Jordan, is how it calls out all these different industries that have a stake in aging. So the majority of companies that consider themselves age tech historically have been healthcare focused, but it's not just healthcare. We tend to narrow the scope of technology that we think is applicable to older people because of a lot of reasons, one of which I believe is our internalized ageism, our institutional ageism that we are still at the beginning of addressing as a culture. But we perceive older adults to be frail. And so we believe that the technology that they need is health care focused. But in reality, it's everything. And I love that about this report from the AgeTech Collaborative because they highlight it is health tech, yes, but it's also, to your point, FinTech, it's AI, it's virtual reality. One of the areas of age tech that I'm very excited about is gaming technology, age-friendly gaming, usages for neuro rehab and empathy training for aging for older adults and younger adults as well. So that, when I read this report, kind of the zoom in, zoom out that we can take from it is, yes, there are these different organizations, these different companies that are focusing in this way, but they're really taking this holistic look at how we age throughout our lives and what that means and how different industries can come to the table.
And that is the thing that I too love about this is aging is an experience that everyone experiences differently. And some people don't experience those dexterity issues or those vision issues that are so often, or even the mobility issues that, we so often attribute to aging. It's like, oh, I'm just getting older. These are the things that I'm dealing with. And while you are susceptible to those things as you age and you become at higher risk, it doesn't mean that that's going to be what you experience. And having that narrative around aging just primes us to believe that we're going to be frail and believe that we're going to have these issues. And it doesn't prime us to believe that as I age, I can be better. But that's ageism. And that's where ageism just rears its ugly head. tell me more about your thoughts. Tell me more about your thoughts and around this report.
Yeah. So the work that I was doing until recently in Colorado was really working closely with age-friendly communities and working closely with the AARP on the design of age-friendly communities in Southern Colorado. And one of my favorite partners in age-friendly community design is smart cities. Have you worked with the smart cities ecosystems, Jordan?
No, I haven't.
So the way that I describe it and the partnership and the collaboration that I see with smart cities is that age-friendly communities are communities that commit to focusing on building the environment. So it's built environment, it's placemaking for the needs and opportunities of aging. And smart cities are communities that commit to tech solutions sort of for the needs and opportunities of civic life. It's transportation, it's social connection, it's digital equity, it's 5G integration of solutions of any kind throughout the community. So the work that I did in Southern Colorado, working in age-friendly communities, I really looked for smart cities partners because that is what I see as being a really great way to build sustainable and scalable solutions for aging and community. It's very data forward. There's a lot of good ways to measure your impact. It's scalable because you can easily apply these tech solutions in other communities with the right partners. So when I think about age tech, I can get, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 feet. It's not just healthcare. It's making sure that if you're designing an app that helps citizens stay connected to voting or government or anything that would keep people connected to civic life, all of those products should be age friendly. All of those products should be designed so that we don't age out of them. When I think about age friendly solutions in general, when I think about what it means to grow up and grow older, I talk about agency in aging. I never want to get to a point where I feel like I've aged out of voting or I've aged out of using tech solutions to stay connected to my family who live all over the country. I want to live in a world that is designed to keep us all connected, no matter how old we are. And that's what I see as being a really good opportunity for age tech founders and age tech companies.
I've heard this described as user-friendly design or even universal design, and I think that's the what we're talking about in making sure that everyone is considered when you design an interface or when you're thinking about customer journey or your user journey. You're thinking about, okay, well, will everyone be able to see this button? Will everyone be able to access this platform? And are there different avenues for different people? So yeah, is that what we're talking about when we're talking about designing of not only cities, but also products?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought up universal design because when I started working in age-friendly communities, I came from healthcare. So I worked in long-term care for 15 years, and I worked in geriatrics as a healthcare provider. And coming to age-friendly communities, I kind of thought it was I thought it was gonna be health forward because I brought with me that also the ageist belief that aging was illness and that aging was health, and so it was going to be healthcare. But really, what it is it's design. It's design thinking. It's how do we acknowledge our power and our responsibility as the adults in the room who are choosing how this community will be built. It doesn't happen accidentally. There are dollars, there's funding that comes down to build transportation systems, and government is a business, nonprofits are businesses, and public-private partnerships operate in, with a revenue source and a return on the investment that they get, either in a social impact or a community design, right? We get the money, we choose how it's spent, and we design where we live. So when I realized that I was in design, I did, I've done a lot of research, a lot of deep dive into what is design and how does it overlap with this and what does it mean? Who are the leaders? How should we be doing this well? And absolutely, inclusive design is the term that's called out in this report from the AgeTech Collaborative. There's also human-centered design, universal design, participatory design is, making sure that we include the people we're designing for in the design process, right? So nothing about us without us, right? Make sure that the people are at the table at the beginning. And the thing that I like about design is design thinking, which is really the process of building, the process of designing, whether we're designing products, so tech solutions, tennis shoes, housing, systems. So products, systems, government systems, transportation systems, workforce solutions for communities, or we're designing the spaces that we live in. So parks, and what should the senior center look like? Whatever we're designing, we use design thinking process. And you start with empathy when you're designing. The first step of the design thinking process is empathy. There is something about ageism that creates a barrier for us as designers in really empathizing well with older adults. And we see it in the design of tech products that are not truly serving the needs of older adults. Tech products that and not just tech products, but anything that is, a little bit ageist, a little bit not right, a little bit outside of what an older adult really needs or wants. So we design these products, we believe them to be tech forward and right. We give them to older adults. Older adults don't use them because they haven't actually solved the problem, the real problem that they would like to see solved. And then we say, oh, well, older adults don't use technology. But they would, I believe, if we designed with them instead of for them. So when I think about universal design, human-centered design, inclusive design, it feels almost impossible to do universal design well if we don't take a targeted universalism approach to it. And what targeted universalism is it says, it's a theory from Berkeley, from what is it called? The Othering and Belonging Institute at Berkeley. And it is a framework for looking at universalism that says we want everybody, to get to this point. So universally, we want everybody to age, let's say aging in place, right? We want people to be able to stay in their homes and have agency and choose where they live. Certain groups are going to need different support structures to get there. So yes, universal design, we want it for everybody. But if we want something for everybody, we have to look individually at groups and see what specific barriers they have based on where they're coming from. So kind of that zoom in, zoom out approach. So zoom out, yes, universal design. Zoom in the empathy piece and say, who might have trouble here? Who's not at the table? What is not working? Despite our best efforts with universal design, why are we still producing products that older adults aren't using? What do we need to do to change that? Zoom back out to universal design. Yes, everybody should be able to use this. So does that make sense? That kind of zoom in, zoom out?
It does make sense. And it makes me think about zooming in and zooming out of the lifespan. You can zoom in to, people that are middle-aged or whatever that means, or people that are younger, and then zoom out to make sure it includes everyone in the lifespan. So that's why, talking about age tech and what is age tech, I feel like a lot of people are looking at age tech in a 100x lens. And they're looking at it as, instead of age tech being something that is inclusive and universally designed, and it's instead old tech as opposed to age tech. And so we get this label and we use it haphazardly on things that aren't really in my mind, or even in the idea of aging, which is an experience that starts from birth and ends at death, to we talk about aging as something that starts at 65 and ends at death. And so age tech is then we're talking about toilet lifts that are age tech, which valuable product to help those that are in need of that service or that product. But that's not age tech. I don't need that now. And it's not built considering me now. It's not built considering aging. It's built considering really not even any point in a lifespan, whereas just something, an experience that some people may experience as a health concern. Not even, I mean, people may need a toilet lift in their 30s or 40s. So, you know, talking about universal design really makes us start to think. And if we keep that in the focus as our mission, as our guiding star, then it makes us really start to understand, well, what is HTech?
Yes, and I love the problem space is my favorite space to operate in. So I love gathering collaborators and thinking about, you know, what truly is the problem, you know, and if we're talking about, for example, aging in place. So let's say the problem is that we don't want people to have to leave their home because they get older. We want people to be able to live, you know, have agency in aging. So live where you want for as long as you can and make that choice. And for some people, that's living in their home that they're in currently. For some people, it's downsizing to a smaller home. For some people, it's moving closer to family. Some people choose assisted living or, you know, a CCRC. But really and truly, if the problem is that we want aging in place and choice for where we live, I am personally agnostic on the solution. You know, there could be a super cool, and I like super cool creative tech designs, like forward thinking. I'm an early adopter. I love all the gadgets and, you know, new creative ways to use, you know, use cases for solutions that have been in other industries. I love all of that. But really, we don't always need a tech solution. Like sometimes it's a social community design. Sometimes it's just teaching, you know, having access to teach someone to a product, to teach someone how to use a product that they already have. Like maybe they have had a cell phone forever, but they've never used Zoom or FaceTime to connect with family. And maybe that touch point for family would be enough to give them the confidence to live alone, that kind of thing. So, it's not always about, you know, something with AI or something that's super tech forward, but just, you know, spending time, again, with empathy, talking to people at all stages of life and understanding what they need, where they're at, and then figuring out what could help them get to that stage, what would feel like a good solution for them. And another thing that I love about design thinking is it's a recursive process. So, you know, you design with empathy, you create it, you test it, you get to what you believe is an endpoint, and you say, okay, is this right? How can we make it better? And you go back to the beginning and you start over.
Well, that's what I love about this report is the report stresses the importance of designing technology with older adults in mind, ensuring that products and services are accessible to and usable by people across all age groups. So, I mean, that's the great thing about this report is it stresses like this is not old tech.
Yes.
This is age tech. And
Yeah.
so this is for the lifespan, and it is considering those that are aging. It's considering those that are aging in whatever those that are at past a certain point in aging, but also considering those that are, you know, looking to still reach that point. For those that are looking to live and not looking to die.
Yes.
I want to dig deeper into, if you don't mind, pivoting a little bit on the first thing that this report talks about is caregiving. Um, and it's I think it was Rosalind Carter that said there are two types of people who um, are caregivers or will need caregivers. And so, and I may be butchering that quote. So
Yeah,
just
I think
for our viewers, like, please, I don't want to get fried later, like you misquoted that person. Um, it is a wonderful quote, but it's true. Like there are caregivers, paid and unpaid, that need more tech support in order to expand their bandwidth.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that comes into understanding also how we design communities, um, as well as services and products that serve um, people aging. So tell me, what are your thoughts around that? And what did you really glean from the report?
Yeah. So caregiving is a great example. I mean, we talk about caregiving a lot in all kinds of um, sectors and all kinds of industries. I mean, even up to President Biden had an executive order targeting caregiver recognition and pay and service in the United States, and not just for older adults, but for younger generations as well, right? I mean, I think a lot of us can probably relate with the idea that they are in a sandwich generation. So we care for younger people in our families and we care for older people in our families. And I saw this in healthcare during COVID. You know, I saw family caregiving structures fall apart when mom and dad were frontline workers and kids were in kindergarten and having to do kindergarten on Zoom, and grandparents, you know, were susceptible to COVID, and it really changed the dynamic of how families cared for each other across generations for a lot of us, and the need for supporting caregivers and the need to make things more efficient and more effective is certainly there. And I think that there's an identity crisis. Maybe it's not that strong. There's an identity space that's a little bit squishy for age tech because there are those who identify as age tech founders and they come to the table and they say, I have an age tech product. And then there are those who design a product and it is a sleeper use case for age tech that is absolutely fantastic, but they
Mm,
don't identify as an age tech founder. And I think that this comes probably from, you know, again, from ageism, right? If you're an age tech founder, you're thinking old tech. And I think that baby monitors are age tech. I mean, it is a tech solution for a stage of your life that you're aging through when you're a baby, and we're going to watch you on this monitor, right? And my friends who have kids, they can connect it to their phone, and, you know, we're in the backyard and they're checking on their kids, and all of these apps that, you know, you can track the baby, you know, when they eat and when they sleep and all the stuff babies do, right? This is an age tech solution. I have seen these models, these, you know, arguably age tech models applied to older adults. And I don't know about you, but if there was a baby monitor in my house right now and my mom could see everything that I did, or like my brother was following every step of my life, if my family was monitoring me, like how we create baby monitors for babies, I don't want that. I don't ever want that in my house. So when we think about designing, you know, for caregiving, this is the thing about universal design, right? Is there is a certain level of connection that we want. There's a certain level of health monitoring that we want, but it's different for babies than it is for older adults. We have to acknowledge the agency and the independence and the you know, the humanity of people in our community and people in our families who are older. So looking at creative solutions for caregivers that meet both ends of the caregiving spectrum, right? It's not just to serve the person who's doing the caregiving, but being respectful of the older adults who are being cared for at the same time.
we have a baby monitor that you can put on this thing, and it will it judges how the baby is breathing.
Oh my God.
And so it can actually like tell if there's an issue breathing from this like it's just like a shirt that you put on the baby, and it actually looks at the shirt and can tell the breathing. So you can monitor the breathing as well as visually monitoring the baby. Really cool stuff. And if you think about like in other ways that you can, put this in other spaces, like in a hospital, to visually measure somebody's, it's really cool stuff. But it makes me think about another thing. We just watched this movie about an older person, and in this movie she had this wearable, and the wearable tracked her movements. It wasn't just like a, hey, I need help, like a life alert wearable. It did do that as well, but it tracked everywhere she went. And that's not agency. That's I don't want to be tracked. I don't want to. I'm an adult. I don't want my caregiver to know where I am at all points. And actually she turned it off and threw it, and she, in order to to get away from her caregiver. Let's jump into, if you don't mind, let's jump into smart home technologies. When we're jumping onto the show, I had told, I won't say her name, but to turn on the lights. And it's so funny. Alexa is starting to get into this space of, or Amazon starting to get into the space of considering themselves an age tech company. I see them at conferences in age tech and in the aging space. But how are we looking at addressing the hesitancy around AI and the trust issues that need to be addressed with it?
I think, that is such a good question. And I mean, that is a huge question. That's a whole other show. But it's not just older adults who have hesitancy, right? I mean, there are people of all
Right.
ages, and I think with good reason. So, there are risks to AI. Also, AI is here. So it's with us. It is in a lot of stuff that we don't even know. Like, it's embedded in a lot of the things that touch our lives. And AI has such, like, I don't want to be afraid of it, and I don't want to be negative about approaching AI, because there are such cool opportunities for AI to help. And to help us age well and to understand us. But garbage in, garbage out. So if we are ageist individuals and we are designing AI solutions, we're going to design ageist AI garbage. And one of the really awesome opportunities for AI in age tech is that it can create this super personalized product if it really understands what it means to be an aging woman who does not speak English in a rural community in Southern Colorado. It can create something awesome for you that really meets your needs, as long as it's, we have to address the bias. We have to get in front of it. We have to design well and can continue to look at and consider if we've done it wrong and make it better. I mean, go to ChatGPT today, or Gemini, I think I haven't dabbled as much in the AI that creates an image. Just
Yeah.
ask it about older adults. Like, you get a bunch of white people who look exactly the same, and they have the same facial structure. They've all got 7 fingers. They're all wearing, muted colors and walking with walkers. And, it's bad. It's terrible. There's a lot of work left to be done there.
Let's talk about the diversity of experiences that are across these United States. By talking about digital equity, I know that's something that we've talked about a bunch. And as you touch on, like, I read this report and I'm like, this is cool.
Hmm.
But if you don't have access to high-speed internet or an internet that can support the internet speed that can support these capabilities of these products and solutions, they're just they're a beautiful thing in a window that you have no access to.
Yeah.
And so, while I love all of the things that are touched on in this report, there's still people, older people, that not only have issues with access on a literacy level, but also just even access on a having the physical access to have that, or even affording to access, or they live in a community, an apartment building that just can't afford to bring in fiber optics, so they're SOL.
Hmm. Yes, I'm so glad that you brought up the digital equity piece, because it's a really good time to be thinking about digital equity in the US, because we have $2.7 billion coming from the federal government to local communities to address digital equity. It comes from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And I think that that's important. So I just want to drop in that the word jobs is in there. This is like a workforce solution for America, right? And the way that this funding is designed, I love it. It's targeted universalism. It says we want everybody in the US to have broadband access, to have a device that accesses the internet, and to know how to use that device safely and responsibly, right? And so there's three legs to this stool. It is broadband is making sure you have the internet, and then the two other pieces are, getting the devices and knowing how to use it. So there's funding for the broadband side. So there's funding to build the internet out to homes, and then there's funding to do the education and provide computers to people. And the targeted universalism piece of this is that the federal government identified 8 target populations that are likely to be on the other side of the digital divide. So there's 8 groups of people in the United States who historically have not had access to internet, who historically have not used, computer devices and maybe need extra help. And I love it, because that's what targeted universalism is. It says, we want everybody to have this. These groups need more help. So let's figure out how to do that. One of the groups identified as older adults. One are people in rural communities. So we know from social determinants of health work that we do across America that rural communities are more likely to be older, sicker, and poorer. So they're less likely to have access to these resources. And we live in a digital world. So digital equity is a super social determinant of health. Like, if you don't have access to the internet, you don't have access to mental health care, you don't have access to financial resources, you don't have access to, telehealth,
Anything.
anything. Yeah. So we need it. And when I think about, tech founders and AgeTech founders, aging in place, smart home solutions, to what point does the founder of an age tech company have a stake in the digital equity plan in the United States? Like, they're not going to have the funding to lay the broadband. They might not have the funding to provide the computers or do the training. But I do think that people who are invested in the age tech ecosystem will benefit from understanding the incentives of digital equity players, because it's going to open the market for serving older adults. We're going to be reaching older adults in rural communities who've never had access to these resources before. It's an opportunity to really change outcomes for Americans, and not just healthcare, but offer workforce solutions in rural communities. And we also need to be getting ahead of the game a little bit, because we don't want to provide devices and access and not do good training about, cybersecurity risks and fraud. And so we need to really be looking at smart solutions for how to train people who are getting devices for the first time. And this funding is set up for that. It is set up to make sure that people get the training that they need to safely use the internet. Wherever you live in the country, look for your state broadband office. Look for whoever in your state is serving the Digital Equity Initiative. Look for regional coalitions for digital equity implementation of state level plans. It's a really good way to understand the future of the market and the future of opportunities for AgeTech.
Wow. Well, I think that sums it up well. That was a perfect little wrap up of everything. You've watched another episode of Tech Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.